Hi, thanks for joining me today. It's Geraldine from the Paper Puffin Studio, and today I'm going to show you how to make this pop-up box card. This card folds flat for mailing, and the finished card measures around 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches, so you'll likely need to make your own envelope for this one. This box card opens up like this and sits nicely on display. I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Now let's get started. Let's begin by reviewing all of the pieces that you're going to need to build this card. You're going to need a piece of your base color, which measures 5.5 inches by 11 inches. You'll need another piece of the same color, and this piece measures 3 5/8 of an inch by 3 inches. And then a piece of white cardstock that measures 2 3/8 of an inch by 5 1/4. You'll need designer series paper, one piece measuring 2 3/8 by 5 1/4, 3 pieces each measuring 2 3/8 by 2 1/4, and a coordinating designer series paper measuring 2 3/8 by 2 3/4. I have here all of the die cuts and stamped images that I'm going to use to decorate this card. The lighthouse, I've got 3 pieces of the seaweed cut out of a green cardstock and then 1 piece from a vellum. I've got the rope, 2 small sailboats, the wheel, the compass, the needle, a large sailboat, and an anchor. This piece here, which I'll use to decorate the sentiment, was taken from the Tasteful Labels dies. And this is a piece of white scrap that I'm going to use to stamp the sentiment on. Now for the scoring. So taking our largest piece of the cardstock, we're going to be lining the 11-inch edge along the top of the trimmer, and I'm going to be scoring at 2 5/8. Slide the paper over to 5 1/4. Score again. Slide it over to 7 7/8. And then at 10 1/2. And then I'm going to take the paper out and turn it so that this smaller edge is at the top where I scored at 10 1/2. I'm going to line this up and I'm going to score it at 3 inches. For scoring the smaller piece of cardstock, which was measured at 3 5/8 by 3 inches, I'm going to place the 3 5/8 inch edge along the top. And using the right-hand side of my trimmer as the guide, I'm going to line it up at 1/2 inch and score. And then I'm going to take the paper out, turn it around, and do the exact same thing. Line it up at 1/2 inch and score. Now I've got 2 score lines on this piece. I'm going to take this piece now and turn it so that the 3-inch edge is along the top. And I'm going to be cutting it in half at 1 1/2 inches. So I'm going to end up with 2 pieces like this. Now to begin cutting for the box, I'm going to orient my paper like this. I've got the small score line along here, and I've got the smaller sections on the bottom. I'm going to be cutting away this piece, this tiny piece here, to start. So to do that, I'll be cutting up that score line, and then I'm going to cut this at an angle slightly to cut that piece away. I'll discard this piece. Now I'm going to take all of these score lines and cut them up to this score line, like this. So all the cuts are now made. We're now ready to fold and burnish along these score lines. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll speed this portion up for you. Now I've placed a strip of tear and tape right along this tab, and I'm going to assemble the box together now. So removing the backing from the tear and tape, I'm going to just fold over the box on itself so that it comes together. And then the box will look like this. I'm going to now make sure that this little tab is at the back of the box, so I won't be folding down this piece. However, I will fold down and burnish the other 3 flaps like this. This longer piece of designer series paper is going to go in the back of the box like this, and it will cover up that flap. You can choose to corner. This next step is optional. I'm going to round the corners of all of these flaps and round the corners up here. You can choose to do that, or you can leave them like they are. I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll pick up there. With all of those corners rounded now, I'm ready to start attaching designer series paper. So I'm going to take the longest strip of designer series paper, and this piece is going to get glued on the inside back flap like this. Before I put that on though, I'm going to go ahead and round the corners here. I've gone ahead now and attached the piece of white cardstock to the back of the card. I rounded the corners and glued it in place. So the designer series paper strip is on the front and the white is on the back. And you can write a message on here. Now I'm ready to start attaching designer series paper. So the pieces that were cut larger are going to get attached to the bottom of the box. And there's 3 sides for that. I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll pick up there. I've got designer series paper attached now to the bottom portions of the box, and now I'm ready to attach these pieces to the flaps. I want to make sure that the sailboats are in the right orientation, and I'm going to be using the corner rounder to round off the corners of these 3 pieces of designer series paper. They will all get glued in place, and we'll pick up there. All of the designer series paper is now in place, and so now I'm ready to attach these pieces that we cut and scored earlier to the inside of the box. So to do that, I'm going to orient the 2 strips like so, and I'm going to be folding these 2 score lines opposite to each other. So one will get folded back and one will get folded frontwards, kind of making a Z shape. So I'll go ahead and fold and burnish those. I have tear and tape attached to the flaps. You'll notice that when you fold these flaps, you want the tear and tape on the outside for each one. So it looks like this on both pieces. And now I'm ready to put these pieces in place on the inside of the box. To glue these 2 pieces in place, I'm orienting them like this so you can see how I'm doing it. I'm going to be taking the tear and tape off of one side only at first. So I'll be removing it from this side and leaving it here. I'll do the same thing with the other piece. Now I'm going to take this first piece and I'm going to place it where I want on the inside of the box. I want to make sure that it doesn't come up above this fold line, and it's going to go in so that it's about here on the inside of the box. I'll hold that in place and then I'll get the other piece ready. I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing, just trying to space these pieces apart from each other, about equal, and lining them up so they're a little bit below that fold line. And then we'll hold them in place. Now the other side isn't attached yet at all, so I'm going to be removing the tear and tape from this piece here, and I'll go ahead and do that. And then from the other piece. And now to help me to put these in place, I'm just going to fold the box over itself, and those pieces will just go in place. So I'll press down, and now I have those two pieces in place where I want them inside the box. At this point, I want to start embellishing the box, so I'll attach some pieces of the seaweed on the back flap, and I'll put some pieces in place on those flaps. The pieces that are going to get placed on the inside, I'm going to be using window sheet to help me with that, and I'll show you as I go along. I've placed some seaweed on the back panel, and the compass with the needle and a brad on dimensionals on this side, and the anchor with some rope using mini dimensionals to attach that. Now I'm going to start attaching the pieces to the inside here. So to do that, I'm going to be taking the lighthouse and a strip of window sheet, which I will cut small enough to fit in behind the lighthouse, and attach it with mini glue dots and then glue it in place. I'll speed this portion up for you. Now with all of those pieces in place, you'll see they're all attached with the window sheet on the inside. I'm going to go ahead and stamp a sentiment for the front, die cut it out, and finish embellishing on this front panel. I decided to use the sentiment Happy Father's Day for this card, and I cut it out using this die cut from the Smooth Sailing dies. Now this piece that I cut out earlier, I'm going to be placing it in behind, but it wasn't long enough, so I'm simply trimming it in half. I'm going to use a glue dot on either side, and it helps to make it a little bit more decorative. This will get attached to the front, as well as some other die cuts, and I'll show you what we have. And here's the finished card. You can see it folds flat, so you can place it in an envelope, and when you open it, it opens like this for display. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.